Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. This video is a saying, hands off, Governor Northam. So Ralph Northam is the governor of Virginia. And it came to light about a week ago, way back in 1984, when he was at medical school. He posed for photos in his yearbook, in which I think he was dressed up as a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and one of his friends was in blackface. Just in case you don't know what these things are, the Ku Klux Klan was a terrorist organization, is a terrorist organization, founded just after the American Civil War by Nathan Bedford Forrest, who'd been a cavalry commander of the Confederate Army. And it was a white supremacist organization dedicated to scaring black people and carrying out ritual murders, these gruesome lynchings in which hundreds of people, whites, would watch a black person being hanged just for asserting his or her rights, or allegedly expressing some sort of attraction to a white woman, things like that. Whites who are sympathetic to black people might well be killed as well. And the KKK, they upheld Christian fundamentalism. They were very much against divorce, often against alcohol. They were anti-Catholic, they were anti-Semitic, they were anti-Hispanic. Proportionally, they actually killed more Hispanic people than black people, because there were very, very few Hispanics in the Deep South for much of that time. But so that was that. They were the most evil people going, and they were quite prominent in the 1920s, and they only went into decline in the 1960s. They haven't murdered anyone for about 20 years. They're quite a minor force these days, but they're absolutely foul. So that's that villainous organization, the Ku Klux Klan. But it's not been forbidden in the United States. Freedom of expression and so on. But they certainly committed hundreds of murders in the early 20th century, and they still glorify these vile crimes. So they obviously ought to have been banned, but they haven't been. So that's what Governor Northam was doing, larking about. And blackface, that was a tradition that emerged in the early 19th century of white actors blackening their skin and somehow changing their lips and putting on a wig and so on to look like a person of African stock and performing on stage. And this was really ridiculing people of African blood. So that's that. Al Jolson famously did this. Now, black actors have occasionally been in whiteface, like in that film White Chicks, which I think bothers very few people indeed. But there we are. But blackface is perceived as being hideously offensive by most people of African blood. There we are. So 1984, wars were a bit different. But now Governor Northam, he doesn't have the excuse of stupidity. He did something very foolish. Did he do it? He initially apologized for this. Then he said, actually, on reflection, it's not him, having looked into it in the photo. I don't know what's what. But my point is, even if he did do this, and it was a moronic thing to do, and it was unpalatable, he shouldn't resign, right? That was 35 years ago. Is there to be no forgiveness? What about all the other policy areas? Nobody's perfect. Everyone has done something stupid in their youth. And I know he wasn't that young at the time. He was at least 22. So I think we should just forgive him, accept his apology, and move on, rather than penalise him for something he did decades ago. He was elected. That's it. He is the governor. He'll face re-election in a couple of years. And if you really think it was that dreadful that he made a tit of himself in his early 20s, you can penalise him now. But I think move on, get this in perspective. He did something distasteful. It upset some people. There should be some mercy, right? Some people are just graceless and want to punish him to the nth degree decades after he did something very silly. So people crack jokes, including sick ones, but we should vote for policies. And he's exercising judgment now, not the misjudgment he made when he was in his early 20s. And I think most people, well, virtually everyone would say it was injudicious. Even those who think that kind of humour is acceptable would say, well, if you've got any political aspirations, you need to refrain from antics of this nature. So is there to be no absolution for things he's done? I think be forgiving. I remember what Sir John Bercow said. He's Speaker of the House of Commons, United Kingdom. His golden rule of politics is magnanimity. So I think we ought to show some compassion. He could do things like making amends, like donating money to charity. The National Association of the Arts of Coloured People, NAACP, has called for him to tender his resignation. Well, surely there are other things he can do to atone for his wrongdoing. I just think if somebody who holds public office turns out to have done something idiotic a very, very long time ago, this person should be forgiven and we should move forward. Otherwise, almost nobody could hold public office. That's that.